So if our company ever gets to the point where we have a private
jet,
private jet,
Yeah.
we don't even have to hire a pilot. We just
Yeah.
have Tate fly us everywhere. It's great.
I don't know about that. We'll see.
I'll wait until you get your 500 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good move. That's a good move.
Welcome to another episode of Start to Finish. Tate, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely.
Today we're just going to talk a little bit about, it's our 60th anniversary this year. What's it like jumping into a company 60 years down the road?
Man, it's been awesome. So I've kind of briefly mentioned it, I think, in a couple forums, but for me, started my career in apparel in the denim world, and that very, very history driven. We were buying a lot of vintage denim. I remember one of my trips, I went to Colorado and worked with this guy who would go into mines, and he would go find workwear that had been left in mines, pull it out, warehouse it, and sell it at
That's awesome.
exorbitant cost to people like myself that were trying to build, very heritage-inspired workwear. So a lot of the work that you're doing with some of our classic boots, looking at old military profiles and stuff, I was doing that in the denim world, and that was a blast. I loved it. It was just there were aspects of it that were a dream, but life takes you different places, and so then to find myself in a tech world more or less in Seattle, long way around. I'm just so happy to be back here to a brand that builds real products, physical, tangible products, and with a storied history.
Yeah.
I think our culture has moved so quickly towards a disposable, whether it's fast fashion and just the growth that we've seen. It's been really fun to get to a company that's grounded, rooted. We still talk about the founder, family owned in Spokane. For me, that's really, I didn't realize how important that was to me until I got away from it. So I'm super excited. It's a really fun time to come into a business where we have an initiative this large as our 60th anniversary.
It's the legacy and the heritage of the brand is amazing. Like it's cool in Spokane, you go to thrift shops and vintage shops, and you're almost guaranteed to find at least one or two pairs of old Knicks boots that are like 20 or 30 years old that have been worn and used, and someone put those on every day for work.
For sure.
It's really cool just being surrounded by that.
Oh, I've hit up a few of the vintage shops around here recently and on my drive home, and most every time I'm in there and right alongside those classic Levi jackets and Wranglers, there's always a pair of Knicks or other loggers. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. How much do you know about our history? Like, have you looked into like the original Nick and all of that?
A little bit here and there. I mean, I know he's the guy that wears a cowboy hat and responds on Reddit.
Yep, of course. Yeah, Nick Jarrett. He is the original Nick. He looks great for 60, 70, 80 years old.
He does. He's timeless. Yes. So, no, I do know that it is not Nick Jarrett.
No.
And I know a little bit, but I think you're going to educate me a little.
Yeah. So, I mean, the original Nick, Nikolai Belushin, his story is insane. He was born in like the 1920s in Russian Ukraine at the time. His mother and father were both bootmakers. And he learned from them for a little bit before leaving to work at a factory.
Right.
Came back to work for them again after learning a bunch. But then World War II happened.
Yeah.
And he was conscripted into the war. And there's an amazing story of him being ambushed by Germans, his platoon being ambushed by Germans, being captured, being a prisoner of war for a bit. And then he escaped. And he tried to run on foot, get back home on foot.
Right.
And I believe it was 6 to 7 months that he traveled.
Oh.
Traveled on foot, and he made it, survived by finding people that would take him in. He would earn his keep, shelter, and food by fixing their shoes.
Wow.
Staying in their place by night or during the day and then traveling at night.
Wow.
Made it almost all the way back and then was captured again.
Oh, what a heartbreaker.
I know, right? It's incredible. So close to the border. I believe he was like 40, 50 miles away from the border.
Good thing he could fix his boots, because it sounds like he put some miles in.
Yeah. Traveling hundreds of miles, almost made it, and then was captured again by the Germans, and he was a prisoner of war. And he was forced to work as a fireman during the bombing raids.
Wow.
And there's a ton of really cool, with the help of Spokesman Review, we got a bunch of really cool articles and stuff from him.
Cool.
Where he did interviews back when he first opened his shop.
Yeah.
There's one really cool one. The title is The Long, Long Walk to Liberty.
Wow.
Where he talks about this whole story. And he talks about, being a fireman during the bombing raids. He said those were terrible days because fires caused by bombings sometimes lasted for days. And they had to fight the fires whether the bombings were going on or not.
Wow.
So he was in the middle of wartime, during bombings, putting out fires, just getting by.
Yeah. Man, what a story of fortitude and determination and even survival, I think it's interesting when I think about the history of boot making here in the U.S., and I'm sure we will get to his journey here, which was easy. I'm sure he just hopped on a flight.
Compared to that, yeah.
Hopped on a flight and landed here, right? But, I think the interesting piece where I'm headed there is that industry in the U.S. is so tied to that European history.
Oh, for sure,
we're not that far removed from it. So as much as it's our 60-year anniversary, you do look back at the whole industry as a whole and see, where was it created? What kind of trials and tribulations did they go through just to get to this point of having the expertise? And also interesting to hear that, a craft that we celebrate today, we do our best to elevate it and honor it. But at the same time, for him, it was survival.
Yeah.
Making boots, fixing boots is what kept him moving one step closer to home.
Yeah. Another thing to think about too is we're celebrating 60 years, but if Nikolai was still here, to him it's didn't start 60 years ago.
Right.
It started with his parents.
Yeah.
Who were making shoes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there were parents before them who were probably making shoes.
Yeah.
The skills he learned are not something that he just figured out when he moved here 60 years, started making boots 60 years ago on his own. It was his lifelong, lessons over time, and it was his career.
Yeah.
That he started when he was, I think, 7 or 8 years old, helping his dad cut leather.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of my point there is, we're celebrating 60 years, but man, it's I don't want to say the tail end, but boy, there's a lot of history that happened before that.
Yeah.
All right, so he's made it almost home. He's been captured. He's now fighting fires during the bombing raids. Where does he go from there?
Well, he just persisted through those dark times until 1945 when he was liberated by Allied troops, and he stayed in a camp for displaced persons, a Polish camp, where he met his wife.
Right.
And the two of them got married, Maria. And they lived in the Polish camp for a few years. They had a son who was born in 1945 as well. And he got by, no surprise, by repairing shoes for people in the camp.
Right.
And then in 1952, he applied for a U.S. visa.
Okay.
Came to the U.S. through New York. He spent some time in Minnesota, North Dakota. And then eventually he found himself in Deer Park, Washington.
Right. Yeah, just north of us here.
Yep. Yeah, not too far off.
During that journey from New York to Deer Park, do you know, was he working on boots? Did he continue to do that? Or
as far as I understand, he did a number of different things.
Okay.
When he moved to Deer Park, he actually was working on a farm at the time.
Yeah.
He was not repairing shoes or making shoes.
Yeah.
He was just, doing what he could.
I
using
feel like
his labor to.
I feel like that's a
free
common
lodging.
story. Folks land here, and even though they had a skilled trade, sometimes they head down a different path. But really neat to see that he came back to it.
Yeah, and I'm sure he could only travel with limited items. I doubt he was able to bring his whole shoemaking, setup with him. But he lived on a farm for about 8 months, and we do have a quote here. It says. He said he's no farmer, and in his spare time at the farm, he was working on some shoes.
Yeah.
So he was on the side, still doing what he loved.
Right.
There's a number of his friends who he made in Deer Park who kept kind of pushing him to get back into it.
Right.
Because they saw the skill that he had.
Okay.
One day he learned about a company called White Shoe Co. that made shoes by hand, and he was intrigued. So he took to it immediately and started working at White's Boots.
And White's was headquartered here in Spokane, correct?
Yeah. So he moved to Spokane around 1915.
Okay.
Where he started working there. And at the time, it was owned and operated by the original, the Otto White, the person who started the company, who also owned some real estate in Spokane, and he would actually sponsor immigrants to work at White's and rent them homes. So
cool.
Nick and his family lived in one of those homes while he worked, actually on 8th Street in Spokane, before he moved to another shop or another home on Sprague, which we actually found out is now maybe 5 minutes down the street from us.
Wow, that's cool.
Which is really cool. Yeah, we looked up the address and everything, and you could see that home is actually where he started doing his own work.
Okay.
He built a shop off of the home, and it's still, I can't remember what it is now, but you can see like there's a home and then there's a shop built off of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So one thing I've noticed here, a lot of times we talk boot making, but sometimes it's interchangeable with shoe making. Do you know at that time, was this a general shoe business that was building shoes for all kinds of things, or was this specific? I know a lot of our heritage is in logging, and was he building boots for a specific purpose, or was this a little bit more general purpose?
Specifically at White's?
Yeah.
I mean, at the time they did a number of different things, but they've always kind of had roots in work boots.
Yep.
I mean, the whole wildland firefighting industry,
right?
I don't think did not exist at this time yet. If it did, it was very new. But I mean, they did general work boots. I think at one point White's did like Western pull-on boots before they moved to Spokane. I could be completely wrong there.
Right.
I mean, White's Shoe Co. evolved into White's Boots at some point in between there.
Okay. So he goes out on his own, starts building boots at his house.
Yeah. So while he was at White's, he worked in the cutting department. So he did a lot of the custom upper patterns and stuff. So he got, and that's something he did with his father when he was younger. So eventually, he broke off, started his own thing. At first, he was just kind of making them at his home.
Right.
We have a quote here. It says, while he was doing what he liked and loved, it wasn't easy. Leonard was a really close friend of Nick's, who worked with him at White's.
Right.
And I actually talked to on a very regular basis. He's actually helped us with the Western boots.
Yep.
So he's been coming in pretty frequently.
Yeah, I remember
seeing with him.
Him in here recently, and I was just actually this morning looking at a photo from back in the day, and really fun to connect the dots with someone I've seen in the facility here, but ties back to this original history.
Yeah, I believe Nick actually taught Leonard a lot of what he knows.
Okay.
Leonard was in high school while he was working at White's at the time in the cutting department. It's funny, we talked to him, got some quotes from him and stuff, and he said Nick could look at something and his brain would just start turning and he could figure it out. He was that fast. He said anyone can make boots, not everyone can make uppers. Which is what Nick did.
Yeah, and something we still feel today, right?
Yeah. When Nick kind of started making things himself, he wasn't making a lot of money. Leonard said he was so poor he couldn't afford vodka, so he made his own using burnt toast and a charcoal filter.
Oh boy.
Which, I mean, that just, something just seems so right about like a old school Ukrainian boot maker making his own vodka while he's making shoes at home.
Right.
But yeah, he eventually, with his internal drive, he wanted to be his own boss, and he ended up starting his own thing. He even, I guess, started making originally in the house that Otto White was renting for him,
right, in
the shed in the back. And I guess Otto White would stop by every once in a while and ask him like, "What's in the shed?"
Yeah.
And Nick would just be like, "Oh, it's just chickens. It's a chicken coop. Don't worry about it." But it was the beginning of Nick's shoe shop in reality. But after a number of years, in 1964, he opened up Nick's shoe shop, working 6 days a week in his small store on Sprague, right down the street.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that was his big thing. We use, I mean, this podcast is named from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
That is actually a direct quote from Nick, because he said that was one of the main reasons he started his own business.
Mm-hmm.
He enjoyed making boots. but he prided himself on doing it from start to finish
Right.
himself.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, it's 2024 and we're in the exact same position.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm at tanneries last week,
Yep.
seeing the hides that we're buying come in this door. They get cut here, they get sewn here, they get lasted here, they get finished here, sanded, packaged, shipped.
Yeah.
Every single thing we do is under this roof on Sprague.
Yeah. Yeah. In the
Just
same
like you said.
building. And there's not a ton of companies that do it that way. There's
Right.
plenty of companies that, due to cost and lack of labor, you have your upper sewn elsewhere, or you have some things bottomed in a different facility.
Right.
But yeah, we do everything from start to finish here.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool seeing the rolls of leather
Yeah.
turn into a full boot.
Yeah. And you asked about my experience entering this. That has been one of the things that is so neat. We'll get to modern history, but seeing how Shyler and Steve, the current owners, have prioritized that ensuring that is who we are at our core. Our DNA has not changed in that way. I think for me, that's been a really neat thing to come in and realize that it is as authentic internally as we have attempted to make it externally. We've tried to be incredibly transparent, and I think it's a really neat way to honor Nick's legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, after he moved in, Leonard started helping him, and with his experience of pattern making, he looked at the White's pattern and he just kind of, he wasn't too happy with them, so he made his own, made them a little bit more rounded in certain areas, blocking off the blucher a little bit. But kind of made his own patterns.
Awesome.
And started doing his own thing.
Cool.
Really putting his legacy into the boots with all of his experience.
Right.
But I mean, he was doing it himself with Leonard and a few other people helping him out for about 25 years or so before he ended up selling it to Gary Myers.
Right.
How much? So you said you haven't really looked into our history at all?
No, I kept thinking I would, but as is the case in any small business, you get in and it's drinking from a fire hose.
Sure,
and
yeah.
we got a bunch of exciting things
Yeah.
this year, so I haven't had the time yet to dig into the depth that I'd like to.
Yeah, because Nick's is we've changed hands like 3 or 4 times now.
Right.
Nick owned it for 25 years. Then Gary Myers took it over in 1980, who was actually Leonard's brother-in-law at the time.
Cool.
So kind of keeping it family business.
Yep.
And it was really cool. Gary he took Nick's to another direction. He was very into, he was a cowboy at heart.
Right.
And so he did a good job of, he would bring Nick's boots to rodeos and show them off there.
Yep.
He started bringing our boots to hotshot crews all over the U.S. and Canada and Mexico. Did a lot of traveling, old school,
Yep.
Selling of, throwing stuff in a truck and driving around and bringing it to the people who need them.
Yeah. It's fun. I know, I referenced earlier that I've seen you going through some old patterns from old military boots and things like that. But then, another project I've seen you working on is Western, and that's a program I'm super excited about, and I think we're going to see some exciting things in 2024 along with that heritage you talk about. I've seen you with 40-year-old cowboy boots and old patterns, hand-drawn patterns that we're looking at as we're developing new boots. So, bringing that all the way to today, it is fun to see the turns that the business has taken along the way. And to some degree, we're going back and looking at those things and saying, what can we bring into 2024, but do it in our DNA?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Gary was actually the one who introduced Packers.
Right.
Which I know you love.
Yeah, that was my first Nick's boot.
Yeah. He brought a lot of Western influences to the company.
Yep.
Packers. We actually used to do Western pull-ons back in the day.
Right.
Before we brought it back. And I think one of the big staples, one of the Western influences that he brought to the company that is now iconic, I think not just for our boots, but in the space, is rough out.
Yep.
Western boots in the 70s, 80s, a lot of Western boots you would see have the rough out leather on the outside. And he brought that to Nick's. And that's where you see smooth over rough out leather, which is such a core of our work boots now. Came from Gary and his Western influences. Yeah,
it's awesome. I know you referenced I love Packers. I had Shyler build me a pair of Packers for my wedding, which was super exciting.
Oh, that's awesome.
I wore those, and afterwards a few of us had headed out and we're at a dive bar in rural Eastern Oregon, and I had a couple people, I'm wearing a full suit and Packers. I had a couple people comment on my boots, but the consistent comment I got from multiple guys in there was, well, they'd be better if they were rough out. So I learned early the advantage of rough out. I was trying to have some fancy boots, but
sure.
my next pair is going to be rough out, I think.
Yeah, I mean, rough out's the best. I personally, I don't think there's anything better than a good pair of like smoother rough out or full rough out, Builder Pros.
Yep.
You can beat them up. There's never going to be any issues. I mean, I have these pair that I've had for 8 years now.
Yeah.
And they sat in my closet for a little bit because I've been getting new nicks.
Yeah.
But in the last like month or so, I saw those again. I was like, you know what?
Yep.
I need to dust those off.
That's
and
awesome.
I've been wearing them like every day since.
It's cool too to see that has been, a lot of other guys are using rough out now as well, but it's cool to know, where did that come from?
Yeah.
That is that Western influence. It wears hard. It's an interesting option out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So Gary, I mean, he did a lot to bring Nicks from a 1-man, 2-man shop to like a fully functioning business with dealers and wholesale accounts and bringing some more models other than the single logger style boot.
Yep. Far before the internet days, right?
Yes, far before.
Yep.
Yeah.
Big dealer network and
but he did a lot, but he only owned the company for about 10 years.
Okay.
Ended up selling it in the 90s to the Petrellis. And that's where, a lot of people still working here today started.
Right. Yeah.
Mikey Hunter, he started in the 90s. Serge started pretty soon after that. Katrina, Ivan's uncle.
Right.
I don't know if you knew that, but Ivan's uncle actually headed up the cutting department before Ivan did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, great history.
A lot of amazing history. And it's honestly, it's pretty humbling working with them and talking to them. And like every once in a while, I'll be like, I think I know what I'm doing. I'll go back there and talk to Mikey, and he'll be like, no. I was like, okay, yep, okay. Yeah. I mean, I can't argue with the fact that, I mean, he's been doing this for longer than I've been alive. We joked about it once. I brought him a pair of boots and I was like, hey, Mikey, check it out. It's got the year I was born stamped on it. And he laughed in my face. He's like, are you serious? I probably stitched those boots.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. I know we've had Mikey on the podcast before, and he's been such a great guy to help get me up to speed as I'm understanding all these little intricacies of boot making. And fun to hear his story too, where he was in boot making, then he left for a little bit. And came back. I think that there is a family aspect of the business as a whole, but back there in production as well. Just neat to have folks like that have shared in a lot of this history. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, him and Alex and Serge. Alex, he started in 2000, so he's been here for 24 years.
Yeah,
and he's still doing it, not missing a beat.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Cool.
But I mean, that's where a lot of our current legacy, I feel like, still holds strong. Is all those people are still doing it the way they've always done it. Giving us some of the best boots in the world, honestly.
For sure.
But yeah, and then after that, I mean, I think you might know Steve Schuyler's dad bought it in 2015.
Yep.
They took over the business. Steve has a connection to the boots in the industry, working in logging for a little bit.
Yep.
I'm not sure if you're familiar, but his dad actually did logging as well, and he worked with him for a bit, I think, while he was in college.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they've followed it, taken the business for the last almost 10 years now and made it into what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. I think it's super neat, the commitment to the craft and the history and really kind of the minimal deviation from how a boot was built 60 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, we're certainly always looking to innovate, but at the end of the day, we've chosen not to compromise on some things. And it's just really fun to realize that Nick's legacy is still here because we are building boots in the same way from start to finish in this facility. And I think we've had a loyal following, and so a thank you to that broader family outside of this room, this facility. Everyone who's bought a Nick's boot along the way is part of that history, and I think that for me, I mean, it gives me chills. It's just fun to see a product I think we've been a really good steward of as a business, and we're excited to continue to grow.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. The community, the customers, everyone working here. It is, like you said, it's a family in a sense. I think one of my favorite things is every once in a while, when I was working in the store, I'd have someone walk in and be like,
Yep.
hey, so I've been wearing your boots for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yep.
And this is my son, and I want to buy him a pair of work boots
that's
now
awesome.
because he's getting to the age where he's going to start working.
Yeah.
And just seeing that generational, like, Nick's has become a part of that family.
Yeah.
And it's just really amazing.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, thank you for bringing me up to speed on the history. Definitely some good nuggets in there, and I'm excited to continue to learn more and see this evolve. You and I, we've had a pretty busy day already and have a busy afternoon. We spent the morning in a 2024 product strategy session. We're going to transition this afternoon into marketing. So I'll turn the script on you a little bit and say, what are you excited for? Looking forward to our 60th anniversary. What are you excited for in 2024 that we're going to bring to market or talk about?
We've got a lot of really cool things in the works
Yep.
to celebrate our 60th anniversary.
Yep.
Some ways that we're paying homage to all this past history and also bringing some innovation to it. I think there's a particular project that we're working on that is like the staple product for the 60th anniversary that I think we're planning hopefully to get out on our birthday in May, that I'm really excited about. I think that's going to be huge. Yeah. And it's really exciting.
For sure. The whole month of May, you'll see some fun things from us celebrating that history. Yeah. I'm certainly excited for that. I can't believe, May's around the corner here.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for that secret project that you're working on. I'm excited for, not to say at all that we've gotten away from our core, because I think the innovation and the newness that we have added over recent history is super exciting. It's really fun. Every day we're looking at a new leather, a new construction, all of that. I think that is awesome, and we'll continue to do that. And I'm excited about the innovation I see there. I think the other thing, just, fresh off that meeting, I'm also excited to continue to look at that core and see, where can we innovate? We are a work boot company. Yeah. And so looking at the trades, we've got the trades program running throughout this year and beyond, hopefully, going back and looking at our core product and ensuring that it is still the absolute best in class. Mm-hmm. And honestly, taking some of the feedback that we hear from customers and making sure people can get that boot as quickly as reasonably possible while not compromising on any of the things we've talked about so far today. But I'm excited for some of that, just operationalizing a lot of the things that we're doing already. And so it's fun to be paying homage to the history that's gotten us here over 60 years, and then coming out of a creative meeting like we had this morning and looking at what those new opportunities are for us as a brand.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm really excited. And this is kind of our first conversation about the history of Next, but I think as we continue to tell some more stories, there's going to be a lot of neat things over the next few months.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's going to be a great year.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, this is Lucas Grassberger signing off for Tate. Kelsey.
Yes.
Producer
Somewhere.
extraordinaire. I can't see you behind these spotlights. But thank you all for listening. Make sure to like and review, rate, subscribe. I don't know how these things work.
Oh, also, quick plug, go vote for the Contender Championship.
Vote for the Contender Championship.
We have our final showdown between a Wick and Craig double stuffed burgundy Robert up against a Wick and Craig double stuff buck or natural? Buck
Brown.
Buck Brown Americana. So go vote. You can find it on our socials if you don't know what we're talking about, but final week, and let's crown a champion.
Yeah. By the time this comes out, it's going to be the final hours.
Oh, yes.
Final hours. Yes.
Yep.
Thanks for pointing that out, Kelsey.
Less than 24 hours to get your vote in.
Yep.
Okay, so the important thing there is then you can go buy the winner at 10%
the next
off
day.
the next day. Tomorrow.
Yep.
So, overall, Lucas, thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, see ya.
What is at the top of your bucket list?
Ooh.
I feel like I'm a little too young to have a bucket list.
I have a bucket list.
You have a bucket list?
You're never too young to have a bucket list.
Yeah.
Top of my bucket list is to go to Italy.
Okay.
My family's from Italy. I'm actually working on my family is working on getting dual citizenship for all of us
Cool.
because of weird U.S. laws on citizenship back in the 40s. We're able to get it.
Cool.
So I really want to go and
Nice.
visit where my family's from.
This has been on my bucket list forever, and I'm almost done with it, which is fun. So I'm learning to fly, and I'm like weeks away from finishing my ticket. So
Oh, really?
get my
That's
private
so
pilot's
cool.
license. But
That's
that's
awesome.
fun because that's a dream I've had since I was like 10.
What are you gonna do with that?
Just going to fly.
Probably commute to work.
So if our company ever gets to the point where we have a private
jet?
company private jet,
Yeah.
we don't even have to hire a pilot. We just
Yeah.
have Tate fly us everywhere. It's great.
I don't know about that. We'll see.
I'll wait until you get your 500 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good
probably-
move. That's a good move.